Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for joining me on the Smell podcast. I'm looking forward to speaking with you tonight. Can we get started? Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do for work? Where are you from? And where do you currently live?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's great to participate on one of these podcasts, and I do appreciate all the work you're doing for anosmia and for patients all throughout. So I'm originally from Long Island, New York, where I grew up, and then I had moved to New York City when I started undergrad, where I studied computer information systems at Baruch College. And while there, I spent my summers doing research at the Manel Center in Philly, where I gained a great understanding for the sense of smell and how it works from the scientific community, as well as gaining access to a lot of the medical journals that are out there on the sense of smell. And for the last few years, I've been working as a technology consultant based out of the city with Accenture.
That's fantastic. So that's really cool to hear that you're already familiar with the Monell Center. They're pretty great. So can you share a little bit more about your own smell disorder story?
Sure. So my story kind of goes back to the fifth grade. I'm actually a congenital anosmic, so I was born without the sense of smell. When I was in my fifth grade science class, my teacher told the class that we were going to do an experiment. She split the class up into groups, gave each group a few opaque containers, and told us to try to figure out what was inside using our sense of smell. So it's a little bit of a grade school sensory exercise. And so I sat there and I watched as my peers, picked up the containers and smelt them and then wrote their answers down. But then I just couldn't do it. And I originally I thought this is something that, I'm not, maybe I'm not able to do, or maybe this is not something that is like something for me. And so I had cheated and I waited for the teacher to look the other way and I opened it up and I wrote the answers down. But it was then when I realized that this is, so when everyone around you is kind of doing something in the same way, and you can't do the same thing, it kind of leads to an understanding that something isn't right and something is wrong, and so that's kind of when I realized I couldn't smell, and since then I've been very active in the anosmic community and trying to bring awareness through everything that we're doing. But that's when I would pin that moment as the eureka moment for when I realized that I couldn't smell.
Yeah, and then just kind of to follow up on that, what did you do next? Like, did you tell your parents, and what was their reaction?
So after that, I think I told my parents, if I remember correctly, it was a long time ago. And I think they did kind of like some smell tests just at home, trying to smell different strong things, and then we didn't think much of it and didn't really do much about it. And then later on, a few years later, is when I went to an ENT to get the formal diagnosis. I'm sure many of your listeners are aware that not many ENTs are aware about anosmia, and it's not really common to experience it. And so it wasn't the easiest thing to do. But once we kind of had that formal diagnosis, that's when things started to become a little more official.
Yeah, so this all happened a really long time ago for you, I imagine. Do you happen to have a memory of the first time that you heard the word anosmia? Can you remember that far back?
So the first time, it was probably, I think, a few years later in junior high or maybe early high school,
Mm.
when I started Googling, no sense of smell and the like.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't find much. There wasn't. I mean, now there's a lot more resources. I wouldn't say a lot of resources, but there's definitely a lot more today than there were. But yeah, I would say that I started looking up no sense of smell and read about anosmia, and then read about the different causes and what different patients are kind of experiencing. And then I kind of looked into Facebook and saw that there are groups out there and where everyone's kind of sharing their stories and coming together, and that kind of creates a sense of community around what we're experiencing.
Yeah, most definitely. So another reason that I was very excited to speak with you was because you actually created a very important day in the world of smell. So you launched Anosmia Awareness Day, which is held February 27th of each year. So how did you decide to create that day in the first place? And then why did you choose February 27th?
Sure. So that's a great question. It's a question I get a lot. So I'll address the beginning. Why create a day? I think there are a number of awareness days out there. There are awareness months where people kind of come together to bring awareness to a cause or an organization. And the idea behind it is to get people to be aware of it, but also to kind of show people that there's a lack of understanding about a certain cause or issue. And so I thought to have like these campaigns centered around a specific day would help with from a marketing standpoint of getting the word out there that there is a thing called anosmia and that there are people, a good portion of the population that does have anosmia, that are kind of struggling with it each and every day. And so I thought that was kind of the best avenue to go on. And then why February 27th? There are a lot of days that are taken is number one. Don't want to infringe on any other causes. February seemed to be the least busy in terms of what's going on, but it also kind of resembles like the end of winter, and as we kind of head into spring when people are kind of talking about smell a little more. So it's kind of right before that time of the year. And then I was in talks with the Manel Center and the Fifth Sense as well in the UK, which I'm not sure if you're familiar. But we decided that February 27th was probably going to be the best day to go around. For the next few years, it fell out on a weekday, and it was convenient for campaigning around as well. And so I would say a number of factors went in here, but it was mainly around the idea that we are going for a kind of like a time period that we can focus on anosmia and not infringe on other very important causes that are out there.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess my next question, when I was thinking about talking with you, is how do you do that? How do you go about creating a day? What's involved in the process?
Sure. So when I started, I know how to create a day. It's not something you Google and can find online. I really just started with a Facebook group or a Facebook event rather, that kind of just started to gain interest among the anosmia community, friends and family of those with anosmia. And it slowly kind of ticked up, and eventually we got to a point where it was being picked up by different organizations. So like I mentioned, the Manel Center reached out and the Fifth Sense reached out, and there are a number of other research centers all over the globe really that have reached out since then. And then we just kind of made it a little bit more involved. And so then they started these events around Anosmia Awareness Day, and they started promoting it on Twitter and through their own social media channels. And it kind of just took on a life of its own. And then a Wikipedia page was created, and so on and so forth. And so it kind of grew itself.
Yeah.
It kind of started as a Facebook event, but people with anosmia are some people are very strong advocates, and I think that really helped us move forward.
Yeah. And then to speak further about that, actually, you mentioned the Facebook group and your Facebook event that you created when you initially went about creating Anosmia Awareness Day. So you have a Facebook group, I believe, which is called Anosmia Awareness Day. So how long has that group been active? I guess,
Sure.
and to ask, what year did you start Anosmia Awareness Day?
Sure. So Anosmia Awareness Day I started in 2012, so February 2012. The Facebook group originally we did call it Anosmia Awareness Day, and there was a link to it. Since then, we've pivoted a little bit and wanted to make the group more about anosmia awareness in general. And so while we do focus on the day, we changed the URL, and so it has been anosmia awareness for a little bit now. And that's kind of the main idea, is that we want to make sure that we're not tied to a specific day. While Anosmia Awareness Day is very important, and we can launch events around it and so on and so forth, it's also important that we're raising awareness all year long. This isn't anosmia isn't tied to a specific day, so the bringing awareness about anosmia doesn't need to be tied to just one day of the year.
Yeah, well, I most definitely agree with you. So the Anosmia Awareness group on Facebook can be found by just searching for that itself, just Anosmia Awareness, or would you be able to share the link to that page and I can include it in the episode notes?
Sure, I can definitely share a link. Yes, you should be able to find it just by searching on Facebook. You can also go to anosmiaawareness.org, and it should be at the bottom of the page. That link should have been updated, and if it's not, I'll be sure to check that out.
Fantastic. And that leads me perfectly into the next question for you, is that you actually do run this fantastic website called Anosmia Awareness. anosmiaawareness.org. So what is the goal of the website?
Great question. So a few years ago, I partnered with Chris Kelly, who had run some smell training sessions, as well as the Manel Center, and we decided that we would create a website to consolidate all resources about anosmia. So the goal was really to be a one-stop shop for everything anosmia. As I mentioned earlier, in the past, you Google anosmia, there wasn't much that came up, and even the stuff that did come up, you were often going to like the second or third or fourth Google page to go ahead and find it. And we wanted kind of to bring it all together into one page, and so that everyone can see, and if they're looking for a research center on smell and they want to reach out to a research center closest to them, they can go ahead and find that. Or if they're looking for a blog post or a podcast, for example, they can go on the site and they can see it. And so we have the website does get a fair bit of traffic, which is very nice and very important. But I want to make sure that people understand that it's important as people with anosmia, a resource for those with anosmia. But I think it also serves a purpose for those without anosmia who are just wishing to learn more, because of everything that's going on and the lack of information that's currently out there.
I agree, and I will definitely include a link to that website in the show notes as well. I do think that there are so many more people who are now interested in learning about the condition. So it's fantastic that you have this website that is like collating all these resources together for people. So next, to kind of pivot into some other questions for you, I want to talk a little bit more about how smell disorders impact you directly. So growing up with congenital anosmia and never having had a sense of smell, how do you think that impacts your relationship with food and eating, if it does at all, in your opinion?
Sure. So as a congenital anosmic, it's very different from acquired anosmics.
Mm-hmm.
I think as an acquired anosmic, based off of the stories that I've heard, they've had a sense of smell and then lost it, and then experience a sudden decrease in what they're able to taste, and that kind of has negative ramifications on their relationship with food. When it comes to a congenital anosmic, I don't want to speak for everyone. I'm sure everyone has a different story, but me personally, I don't think it impacts my relationship with food as much as those with acquired anosmia, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still an impact in a sense. I still prefer stronger tasting foods and spicier foods and things of that sort. Just I think because the sense of taste is not as either strong or doesn't appear to be as strong when you can't smell. And so I would say that I think it does affect it. I don't think it impacts me as a congenital anosmic as much as it impacts those with acquired anosmia.
Yeah. So the next question about this, having grown up with congenital, is at this point in your life, when smell comes up on a day-to-day basis, do you take the time to explain to people that you don't have a sense of smell?
Sure. So it depends on the situation. If it's a quick, introduction, I don't traditionally bring it up. If it's someone that I feel like I can engage with conversation on, and it'll be like more of a longer term relationship, I'll definitely take the time and explain it. And that's usually followed by the typical questions that I'm sure us anosmics all get, which is the taste and can you smell anything and
Mm-hmm.
all that. So I do take the time to do it, and people are often surprised to find that not only do I have anosmia, but I also have this Anosmia Awareness Day and this organization that we run. And so I do try to educate the public as much as possible. You need to it's definitely important to do so, but it's also important to understand that I think there are times that are more appropriate, and there are times that are less appropriate. And I think more often than not, I am explaining it, and I do try to take the time, but unfortunately, just circumstances that don't always allow for that.
Right. No, I agree. Sometimes it would just be more awkward to bring it up than not.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So this next question I actually really enjoy asking, and there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just interested in your thought process. Do you self-identify as having a disability with anosmia?
So I personally don't, but I think it has to do with being congenital anosmic versus acquired anosmia. I think one with acquired anosmia would say they had something and they lost it, and so I think from what I hear through through Anosmia Awareness through the email account. I hear plenty of stories of individuals that definitely do view it as a disability. I haven't really viewed it as a disability, only because I've never had a sense of smell. But yeah, I think it would impact different people differently.
Great. Yeah, thank you for elaborating. What would you like people who don't have a smell disorder to know about what it's like having one? Like, what's the number one thing that you wish that they would just understand?
The number one thing I would say, the biggest thing is, it would be nice to answer some of those questions that we all frequently get, which is that, like, when you say you don't have a sense of smell, to them to understand that you really don't have a sense of smell, and it's not just certain things that you can't smell. I think
Mm,
that would be nice. I know some people are more sensitive to that, but that would be nice. But I think also just it's important that people are aware of the idea that there can't be a sense of smell. I think a lot of people go around and they take it for granted, as maybe they should. As I think we take for granted our sense of sight or sense of hearing. But I do think it's important that people are at least aware that there are people who can't smell, and to recognize that for some individuals it is a sensitive topic. And I don't think that people are quite in tune to that as they should be.
I agree. Is there anything else that you would like to share with listeners, maybe about your future plans for the Anosmia Awareness website?
Sure. So we have a new website currently being developed, a little bit of a refresh that's happening. Hopefully that'll get released or go live will probably be within the next few weeks. And I'll make sure to post on our social media channels about that as well. And I think hopefully we'll include more podcasts. And if anyone has any literature, any blogs, any groups or research centers or anything really about anosmia that they'd like for us to include on our site, we are trying to make it a one-stop shop, and we're trying to increase traffic to those resources. And I think it has been quite successful at routing people with anosmia or those wishing to learn more in the right direction. And so if there are any resources out there that are missing on our site, we would love to definitely for you to get in contact with us, and we can include those details.
Fantastic. And so I didn't ask this question ahead of time, but it sounds like the 10-year anniversary of Anosmia Awareness Day is coming up next year. Do you have any ideas in mind for how you'll celebrate that 10-year celebration?
It's a good question. I don't think as of now there's nothing that I have that I'm currently working on, I would say, but we do plan on getting in touch with a lot of the different research centers and advocacy groups that we've had connections with in the past, and hoping to do some sort of collaborative event. Of course, with COVID and everything, it's hard to, as of now, it's hard to predict what next year will look like.
Mm-hmm.
But I am hoping to connect with the Manel Center, the Fifth Sense, and a number of other organizations and advocacy groups out there to go ahead and try to come together with some collaborative effort.
Fantastic. And just final question, can you just reiterate again for listeners, how can they find the Anosmia Awareness website online?
Sure. So you can Google Anosmia Awareness, which is very easy. You can also, it will probably be the first link, I believe. You can also go to anosmiaawareness.org, or you can go to our Anosmia Awareness Facebook page, and there should be a website link on there as well.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me about how you started the day, what's involved in that, and just the important work that you've done for the community so far.
My pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking with you.